Hi, members of the Association of Chinese Architects, students of the School of Architecture, and architects from ASEAN countries. It's my great pleasure to be with you for the Architects for 2021, which is the largest building technology exposition in ASEAN. I am Seung-yeol Liu, an architect practicing in Korea. Today, I'm going to tell you about three stories of cultural heritage in Seoul. The first story is about Seoul City Wall. The second story is about the Namseoul Museum of Arts. And the third story is about the Gongpyeong Historic Site Museum. It's a story about Seoul's 600 years history. It's a very interesting, both culturally and historically, that is still living in a daily life of Seoul citizen. First, I'm going to start the story of the today with a map. What is the map and what does it show? By the Cambridge Dictionary, it is defined: a map is a picture that shows where countries, towns, roads, etc. And Google defines a map is a symbolic representation of selected characteristic of a place, usually drawn on a flat surface. They teach about the world by showing size and shape of countries, location of feature, and distance between places. Map can show distribution of things of Earth, such as the settlement of pattern. This is the map of Seoul in the 17th century. What does it show? It shows shape of Seoul called Hanyang 400 years ago. Shape of mountains, streams, and fine trees are expressed with a picture. Rows with red lines, and location of a palace and major government office were expressed in letter. We can understand that the Seoul was surrounded by mountains in the east, west, north, and south, and stream flows in the middle, and where palace and main government office located through the map. This is the tourist map of Seoul City Wall. It divides the wall into 6 sections and shows the location and length of each, as well as the location of a major facility, such as 4 main gates and 4 sub-gates, and also shows the location of major cultural sites located near the city wall. There are 13 cultural heritage sites and 1 natural heritage site designated by UNESCO in Korea. By period, there were 6 heritage from 3 kingdom period, dates from 50 BC to 668 AD, 1 heritage of a Goryeo dynasty, 5 heritage of Joseon dynasty, and 1 prehistoric site. In Thailand, 5 heritage are listed in the UNESCO, 2 from Sukhothai period, and 1 from Ayutthaya, 1 prehistoric site, and 2 natural heritage sites. Let's look at the history of Korea and Thailand after 13 centuries. In Korea, the kingdom of Goryeo, which lasted 500 years from 918 to 1392, fell, and Joseon dynasty was founded by the King Taejo. After that, Joseon continued for 500 years until it was annexed by Japan in 1910. In Thailand, the kingdom of Sukhothai was established in 1238 followed by the Kingdom of Ayutthaya, which was established in 1351 and lasted for 400 years until 1767. One of the important commonality between the two countries is the invention of the letter. In Korea, King Sejong, the first king of Joseon dynasty, invented Hangul, Korean alphabet. And in Thailand, 150 years before this, King Heng, the third king of Sukhothai, invented the Thai script. Next, let's take a look at the history of Seoul. First, Seoul was the capital of Baekje Kingdom for 500 years from BC 18 to AD 480. Goryeo dynasty, who unified three kingdoms, designated Seoul as the second capital city for 500 years, calling it Namgyong. Joseon dynasty, which opened in 1392, again made Seoul as its capital, and now Seoul is the capital of South Korea. As such, Seoul has served as a capital or the secondary capital for 2,000 years in the history of Korea. As the first presentation, I'm going to tell you about Seoul City Wall. It is called Hanyang Doseong in Korean. This is the case of restoration. In 1392, the 500-year-old Goryeo dynasty fell on the Korean peninsula. King Taejo, a military commander of Goryeo dynasty, founded Joseon anew. 2 years after the opening of the country, he moved the capital to Hanyang, now Seoul. And 2 years later, in 1394, the Seoul city wall was completed. At this time, the wall on the ridge of the mountain were built with stone, and all the grounds were made of earth. In 1422, the first king Sejong rebuilt the wall that had been built out of earth with stone. And 300 years later, in 1704, King Sukjong performed a major renovation, and it took on its present appearance. King Taejo, who founded Joseon, completed the 18.6 kilometer long Seoul city wall in the third year of his reign. According to the record, about 200,000 people participated in the construction, and it was completed just in 98 days. Total 267 stones with letters are found throughout the Seoul Doseong, Seoul city wall, as the wall was constructed by dividing a total length of 18.6 kilometers into 99 sections. Each section left a record including the participants, person in charge, place of origin, and period on the inscribed stone block. The Seoul city wall is located in the center of Seoul, and the total length is 18.6 kilometers. The distance is about 5 kilometers from east to west, about 8 kilometers from north to south. The breadth of the section is 13.4 kilometers. The damaged section is 5.2 kilometers, and restoration has begun in 1975, and 12.8 kilometers has been restored to the present. 4 main gates were erected geographically in the east, west, north, and south. Among the four gates, south, east, north gate were preserved, and west gate was demolished during the Japanese colonial period. So you can only see it in photograph. Four small gates were erected between the four main gates, of which Soimun was damaged, and Haewamun and Gwangimun has been restored. In addition to this, there has been beacons and two water gates. Beacons were restored and two water gates were partially restored as trails were discovered during the DDP construction designed by the architect Zaha Hadid. The Seoul city wall, which had been protecting Seoul for 500 years, was greatly damaged starting in 1910 when Joseon was destroyed by Japanese invasion. In 1907, the northern part of South Gate was torn down. Dismantled of five arch floodgates in 1908, damage to the northern part of East Gate in 1911. Soimun was demolished in 1914. From 1915 to 1928, Donimun, Haewamun, and Gwangimun were demolished. Even after the liberation in 1945, the damage followed by the Korean government and also by the Seoul Metropolitan Government until 1972. The restoration project had begun to start from 1975. The 8.8 kilometer long wall, including two small gates, were restored in 1982. From 2003, extensive excavation and restoration work had started with the Cheonggyecheon restoration project and Dongdaemun GDP work designed by Jahadi. Some 70% or 3.37 kilometers of the original wall has been restored or rebuilt until 2014. The Seoul City Wall, which has been Joseon dynasty for 500 years, was destroyed with the fall of Joseon, and it was thoroughly damaged by the government and sometimes by individuals and forgotten in the memory of the people for over 100 years. It has returned to the arm of Seoul Citizen through the restoration beginning in 1975 and has become one of the most favorite places for not only Seoul citizens, but also for foreigners visiting Seoul. During the Joseon dynasty, people used to take a walk along the city wall and appreciate the beautiful scenery of Seoul created by the changing season. These customs continue until modern times, but for the security reason, it stopped as troops stationed at the mountain of the Seoul City Wall. The Seoul City Wall tour is divided into 6 sections, including Daegak, Naksan, Hnyinjimun, Namsan, Namdaemun, and Ilwangsan section, so that you can see the Seoul City Wall with the amazing surrounding landscape. The first Daegak section is 2.5 kilometer long from northwest gate to northeast gate, with a steep slope. The view of Seoul from the Daegak mountain, which is called main mountain of Seoul, is amazing. This is the northwest gate called Changimmun. It's the starting point of this section. The wall shows that they were restored through different periods. Now the stairs and wooden deck were made for the promenade. You can see the different shape and size of stone in this photo. The Seoul City Wall was built and renovated 4 times. It is possible to know when it was constructed and repaired through the size and the shape of the stone. This inscribed stone states that in October 1804, the first year of King Sunjo's reign, Oh Jae-min headed the work to repair the wall. Lee Dong-han supervised the work. The stonemason was Yang Sung-hee. This is the north gate called Sukjeong-mun. There are 5 villages like this where inhabitants live outside and near to the wall. This section gives you a wonderful and memorable scenery of the city and mountain. Please appreciate the video from the top of the Bugak mountain. The Naksan section is 2.1 kilometer long from Hyeomun to Hnyunjimun with a relatively gentle slope. It is popular as a date course for young couple as it allows you to enjoy the beautiful night view of Seoul. It is also a favorite spot for foreigners visiting Seoul. This is the northeast gate called Haewamun, which is the starting point of this section. The slope is gentle, and the wall with the trees and flowers initiates your promenade. This inscribed stone marks the starting point of construction section undertaken by the people from Chungcheong province. In Hanyang Doseong, Seoul City Wall, there are more than 280 such inscribed stones of various dates and type. Hnyunjimun section is a 1.6 kilometer length from East Gate to Jangchung Gymnasium. It is located in the lowest place among all the world and was built on the flat land. This is the most damaged section. Most part of the wall had been destroyed. Dongdaemun was preserved and Hanyang was restored. Outside the wall, some inhabitants of the town used the wall as their foundation and built houses of them. This is the east gate called Hnyunjimun. It's the starting point of this section. A marker that indicates the location of the city wall before its destruction. This is the aerial view of GDP Dongdaemun Design Plaza, designed by the architect Cha Hadid. It is right next to the Dongdaemun. In the basement, many of Joseon dynasty buildings, as like 2 arch floodgates, had been founded, and the GDP building was built above them. At the time of construction, it was pointed out by many Korean architects as one of the disgusting buildings. But now, it is one of the most visited buildings by tourists. The architect Cha Hadid is surely one of the most famous architects in Korea as well. This is the southeast gate called Gwanghwamun, which had been destroyed during the Japanese colonial era and reconstructed recently. Even today, there are many houses constructed on the city wall. In the process of preparing the application for registration as a UNESCO heritage site, Seoul Metropolitan Government had plans to demolish these buildings and restore the wall, but now they are finding a way in which the past and the present coexist while maintaining their existing state. Namsan section starts from Jamchundan Park to South Gate called Sungyeon. The distance is 4.2 kilometers. The time required is 3 hours. And 5 beacon platforms were installed on the top of Namsan Mountain, which is 270 meters above sea level, which was a means of communication to inform the invasion or uprising of external enemies. The wall of Namsan Mountain was greatly damaged by the construction of a shrine by Japan in 1925. The National Assembly building, the Anti-Communist Alliance Center, Seoul Tower were constructed on the wall after liberation in 1945. But they have been defining their appearance since 1970 through preservation and restoration. The National Assembly building and the Anti-Communist Alliance Center, Seoul Tower were constructed on the wall after liberation by the Korean government. The beacon platform was restored on the top of the Namsan Mountain. Namdaemun section is from Namdaemun to the site of Donimun. The distance is 1.8 kilometers. It is located on a flatland, as like the Dongdaemun section had also been most damaged. Namdaemun, the first national treasure of Korea, has remained in place for 500 years, was recently burned down as a fire and rebuilt 2013. The rest Inongsan section is from Donimun site to Changmun. The distance is 4 kilometers. It is a steep granite section that is relatively well preserved and contains beautiful strange rocks. The view of Seoul from summit of Inwang Mountain is truly spectacular. This is the guy who took pictures. I visited the site several times in different seasons, in spring, summer, autumn, and winter, to watch the different view which is made by the season. Seoul, a huge city with a population of 10 million and area of 605 square kilometers, is a continuum of freshness every day, and a city where many people are busy moving and changing rapidly. However, that is not all about Seoul. Seoul is a historical and cultural city in 600 years of a thick past coexist with today's daily life. In the process of modernization, the city wall function was lost and lost its appearance in oblivion and moved away from us. But Hanyang Doseong is still in the center of Seoul. It has been revived through the excavation and restoration, continue to change throughout the 4 seasons and day and night, and still embrace the people of Seoul who visited the site. Next, I'll tell you about the second story about the Nam Seoul Museum of Art. Nam Seoul Museum of Art is the first Belgian consulate to establish diplomatic relations with Korea in the late Joseon dynasty in 1905. After the collapse of Joseon dynasty in 1910, several institutions come to use the building, but it was on the verge of being demolished due to the modernization and expansion of Seoul in the 70s. It was relocated to its current location and is now used as a branch of Seoul Museum of Art. The two-story Western-style building in the middle of the picture is the former Belgian consulate. The mountain on the right side of the photo is the Bugak Mountain. And there were many Hanok Korean traditional houses around it. Unlike the previous picture of the 1920, the Hanok had been disappeared and a Western and Japanese style building were built on the site. In 1977, the former Belgian consulate was designated as a National Historic Site and decided to be moved. The whole area, including the building site, was designated as the redevelopment zone. The current location was confirmed as new site. Its removal and reconstruction followed by dismantlement of all the brick, stone, and wood. Displaced from Hyeondong to Namyeongdong, the former Belgian consulate framework was restored according to its architectural drawing. The reconstruction was started in March 19 of 1980 and completed on August 31. The new site area was designated as a protected reserve, but it took 20 years more to revive into the Museum of Arts. Now it lives as a museum where the modern art exhibited. The former Belgian consulate or neoclassical building stands as a witness to history in its complete form, and it begins its new life as a branch of Seoul Museum of Art with today's life. The third story is about the Gongpyeong Historic Site Museum. Since King Taejo made Seoul as the capital of Joseon, Gyeonpyeongbang was the most popular downtown area and the center of the market during the Joseon dynasty. There were the royal family's houses and government offices such as judicial institution and medical institution. In the process of the urban regeneration project in Gongpyeongdong in 2015, alleyways and building sites that dates from Joseon to modern Seoul period were completely unearthed. The Seoul metropolitan government created the Gongpyeong Historic Site Museum by preserving the city's relics and memories in their original location. The newly constructed Gongpyeong building is an edifice with 5 stories below the ground and 30 stories above the ground. Gongpyeong Historic Site Museum completely restored the remains of 3 houses and 1 alley to their original location on the first basement floor of this building. As a result of the excavation, the 4 cultural layers stretching from Joseon dynasty to the modern times were found. The first cultural layer dates from 16th to 17th century, where relics of 3 houses and alleyways has been found, maintaining in their most complete form, were transferred to the museum for restoration. The Raj House is the biggest relic unearthed from the site. The building was rightly either a house of middle class or an annex of government office. As the stone base and foundation stone were still well maintained, it makes it easy to identify the house was the rectangular shaped structure. The ondol, Korean floor heating system, the wooden floor, and fireplace at kitchen vividly showed Korean style housing in the early Joseon period. At the center of the site, 3 alleyways, each with a width of 210 to 305 centimeters, were found. all sharing the same width. The three alleyways were unearthed at the same location and from all layers of soil. This is the first case to apply 공평동 rule, which are aimed at preserving cultural assets at the original location of discovery in their most complete form. First rule, architectural design that takes into account the location of a buried cultural property. Second rule, encourage voluntary participation of project operator by granting floor ratio based incentive that accords with the preservation area of the buried cultural property. Third rule suggests the guideline for the construction of a historic site museum. Fourth rule, Seoul metropolitan government is in charge of preservation and management of a historic site museum. Next to the relic of the Raj House, a 1:10 size model was made to reproduce its original appearance. You can experience the space of a rectangular shaped house through a projection video made using virtual reality technology. Small house, you can see the inside and outside, which was restored in actual size. You can walk while imagining the street of a Joseon dynasty in the 16th century. How exciting! Various household items, tiles, ceramics, and earthenware from the excavation process are exhibited. This is the case where the excavated cultural assets are preserved in their original location as much as possible, and incentives are given to the project developers to achieve win-win development and preservation. Korean culture now. Perhaps you have learned through K-pop, K-drama, K-beauty, K-film, K-food, and so on. Now, on that, Seoul, which has a history of 600 years, with the Seoul City Wall and other numerous cultural heritage, will invite you to the most interesting journey. It is important to restore and preserve historical, cultural heritage. But it is more important to live and coexist together with them in the present life. Thank you, Kakun.